Hi, my name is Robin. Welcome to English Grammar Now. Today, we're going to be talking about what happened before. We're talking about the past simple tense. Until now, we've been talking about the present, but the past has some important changes we need to know. When we talk about something in the past tense, the verbs change. Some verbs change more than others. You can see the comparison here. In the present simple, we say, I am, he is, they are. When we change it into the past, the to be verb becomes, I was, he was, they were. Another verb we can look at is to do. In the present, we say, I do, he does, they do. In the past simple, there's only one form of to do. I did, he did, they did. Here's some examples of to be and to do in the present and the past. It was raining this morning. Now it isn't. My grandparents were here last week. Now they're at home. We were hungry at 5 o'clock. We're not hungry now. Rachel was 13 last year, so she is 14 now. I've underlined all the time phrases in these example sentences. This morning, last week, 5 o'clock, and last year. Then you can see in the present simple sentences, I've made it clear by adding the word now. Why don't you try? Where were the people in the picture yesterday? We have little pictures that you can write sentences about. Give it a try. Here's what you could write about each of these people. Mr. and Mrs. Lim were at a restaurant. Because there's two of them, we need to make sure we use were and not was. Ben was at the beach. Brienne was at work. And my friends were at the park. Pretty easy, right? When we change from the present into the past, we can still make negative statements and questions in the same way. Instead of saying, I am not, we say, I was not. But we can also shorten not with the verb. I wasn't at school last week. They weren't interested in the tour. She didn't watch the movie. Where were you? Were you sick? You can see that was and to do come in the same spots as they would in the present tense. And we've used not to make some of these negative. So we can say wasn't, weren't, and didn't. Just like in the present, we use to do if there is no to be verb in the sentence. In the past, do becomes did. So a question might look like this. Did she call you yesterday? This is a sentence in the past because it's talking about yesterday, so we need to use did instead of do. The answer might be, yes, she did. In a more complicated sentence with a question word, to do comes in the same place. Where did they buy those shoes? The answer, they bought the shoes at the mall. Because the answer is a sentence and not a question, and it's positive, we don't need to have the verb to do at all. Buy is one of those tricky verbs in the past tense. We'll talk about that in a moment. There are two different kinds of verbs. The main kind is called a regular verb. This verb will follow a pattern or a rule when it changes into a different form. We've already looked at to be and to do. But the regular rule for changing a verb into the past tense is to add ed at the end of it. So, work becomes worked. Clean becomes cleaned. Stay becomes stayed. Start becomes started. And need becomes needed. Luckily, these verbs will always change in the regular way. The rule works for these ones. However, not all verbs are like this. There are some verbs that have interesting spelling changes. For example, when there is a consonant and then a Y at the end of a verb, like in the verb study, we change the Y into an I before we add ed at the end. So study with a Y becomes studied with an IED at the end. Cry also changes in the same way to become cried. And when we have a verb that ends with a vowel and then a consonant at the end, we add one more of the same consonant before we add ed. So a verb like plan will become planned. Stop will become stopped. The sound is the same, even though we have two consonants, but it's important that we spell these verbs correctly in the past tense. Now, there are some verbs that we call irregular. It means that there isn't a rule for how they change into the past tense. They change in some unexpected ways. Here's a list of some of the irregular verbs. Unfortunately, we just have to memorize these. Let me tell you some examples. Go becomes went. Run becomes ran. Think, thought. Begin, began. Bring, brought. Come, came. Pay, paid. Say, said. Drink, drank. Eat, ate. Forget, forgot. Get, got. Have, had. Know, knew. Sleep, slept. Take, took. You can notice that many of the times a vowel in the verb changes, and sometimes more than that. Verbs like go becoming went is a big change, so we need to remember those. Also, you might notice that in the present, we have to change the verb to match the pronoun. The way the verb looks with I isn't the same as how it looks with he, she, or it. So we might say, you listen to the music, Lisa listens to the music, by adding an S. However, except for the verb to be, the verbs in the past do not change to match the pronoun. You listened to the music, Lisa listened to the music. The verb is the same. Here's one for you to try. We have 5 verbs and 5 sentences. You might have to go back and look at the irregular verbs list because some of these verbs are irregular. See if you can match the word into each sentence. Give it a try. Here's the answers for those sentences. We visited the museum on our trip to Thailand. Carrie took a lot of pictures to show her family. We went by bus to the mountains. We planned to go hiking, but it was raining too much. We talked to so many nice people on our trip. You can see that took and went are irregular verbs. They change in unexpected ways. And we want to make sure that we spell these verbs correctly. Did you remember to put 2 N's in the verb planned? Let's look at a conversation that uses the past tense. See if you can find the past tense verbs that are used here. What did you do on the weekend? I went to my family's house in the province. Was your family happy to see you? They are always happy to see me. I brought them some fruit, and we had a nice meal. Did you stay long? No, I didn't. I only stayed one night. I needed to get back for my classes. Let's take a look at the past tense verbs in this conversation. Here I've highlighted the past tense verbs. Did you find them all? Also, did you notice that there is one present tense verb in this conversation? That's right, in the middle. They are always happy to see me. We use the present tense for this sentence because it's always true, or it's true generally. Everything else is an event that has already passed. But that is something that is still true, so we keep it in the present tense. All right, thank you for studying the past tense with me. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!